Welcome to the MBD podcast, the show where we dig into what's actually working or not. And today's guest has definitely been there to help businesses scale. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell everybody about where you've been, what you're doing, and where you're going.
Yeah. Hey, Jason. My name's Conor Lee. I'm the founder of Afters Inc. We help cash-based aesthetics businesses, med spas, plastic surgery centers, et cetera, basically increase their revenue. And before starting Afters, I started little less than a year ago. For the 10 years before that, I helped companies like Google, Lyft, Rippling, Zenefits, Gusto, basically do high quality lead generation as a SaaS app and also with the services business, and then sold that a couple of years ago. Took some time off and started Afters.
Awesome. So when you first start working with some of these med spas or others in the health industry, what are areas of opportunity that you look for them to help them identify opportunity, help them scale, and help them not essentially step on their own toes?
So I'm sort of like a I really like revenue ops,
Mm-hmm.
and so what I tend to look at is like the business fundamentals first. So I'll usually jump into their EHR or CRM, get access to to real data, and just look at what everything, the whole picture, not just the top of the funnel, but how people convert to revenue. And the cool thing about med spa businesses and cash-based medical businesses is that they're effectively like reoccurring revenue built in.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment you get isn't going to generally, unless it's plastics, but generally if you're getting injectables, Botox, et cetera, you need to come back every 3 to 4 months or 6 months for it to take shape. So customers are naturally reoccurring. So I tend to think of med spas as like effectively kind of like SaaS businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And then focus on first, all right, well, like what are the big holes kind of in their existing, not just pipeline, but what are the holes in their retention. So I'll tend to focus first on, all right, let's look at retention, do a cohort analysis, different periods of time, and then look at things like, there are some really basic things that a lot of people kind of overlook in running their business. One of them is reoccurring bookings. So at a given point in time, how many of these patients that you've seen are they booked out for their next visit?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of one-on-one stuff, but it can be hard to execute for just because of the natural running a business is hard. And so I'll focus on that first. So, all right, like, could we get patients to show up and to, if they're not booked, how do we get them to rebook? One, and then two, how do we set up a process for making sure that 70-80% of patients are booked for the next appointment? Yeah.
I find with a lot of the business I consult, I end up starting at that point, the loyalty campaigns or the recurring campaigns, especially for subscription based models, because you're like, why don't you have an onboarding email drip? Why don't you have a follow up email after they do an appointment? Why don't you have an intro email like, hey, this is the person you're going to be working with, and here's things of what to expect? And you're like, you guys, like, you know this would be great because you do it, you've experienced this, you like this, but yet when it comes to their own business and business owner, they're like new clients, new clients, new clients. You're like, hey, you can get another 20-30% revenue out of the existing clients if you just structure it correctly.
Yeah.
So you go in, you identify these area of opportunity, right? So like say we're working on the re-engagement campaigns. How do you help them structure those, or what do you do to make sure that they have a clear understanding, like this is what's going to help you need to focus on this now while everything else is going?
Yeah, I mean, recurring revenue and retention rates are not always like, straightforward for most people. It
Yeah.
takes, like, if they haven't thought, if they're not experienced in this space, they kind of have to be educated on why it's important. So I like to focus on laying out like scenarios. So particular spreadsheets say, look, if this happened, if you did this, this is what your revenue would look like. No new staff, you don't need to pay anything up front, for
Mm-hmm.
Google ads necessarily. And then I try to we try to knock out like a really, get some real tangible benefits by setting these things up quickly so they can see the wins that proves that this approach works. And then after we sort of proven, all right, well, retention is an important thing. Let's knock some things out to increase retention. Then we'll kind of move on to other areas. And kind of then we'll start getting into, all right, well, the hole in your bucket is smaller. All right, now let's fill the bucket with other
Yeah.
things. But whereas most people just focus on, let's just fill this bucket.
Yeah.
So that can
Yeah.
be a hard thing for people to kind of get used to if they're not.
Yeah. So now let's say you go and you got it optimized. They're running they got their re-engagement campaigns going on, their intro or their out or their different ways to keep customers booked. Now how are you trying to fill that bucket once you've got the bucket optimized to convert higher for subscription based recurring revenue? What are you doing to fill that bucket up now?
So we focus on so part of what our application does is it uses AI to understand the med spas, the aesthetic businesses customers. So it basically interviews them, interviews the customers. It asks them what they want, what are they concerned with, what are the issues that they have, and then we use that information to basically create compelling offers individually targeted for each of the patient. And so we understand where they are, what their price sensitivity is, uh, what are their different things they're concerned with. So if they, and a lot of this aesthetics, it's a lot of it primarily is about face. There's other parts of the body that are treated too, but face is number one. And so we use AI to analyze, the different features of their face. So let's say I have got, nasal labial folds, these smile lines right
Uh,
here. Maybe I've got these wrinkles in my forehead. I'm in my mid 40s. I'm getting some, right around here, some crow's feet.
Crow's feet.
Oh
Yep.
yeah,
Start covering up with facial hair.
yeah. I got a lot more in the last year and a half with my
Yeah.
kids. Um, but yeah, and you sort of, so we can analyze that, or we have software that looks at that and says like, okay, so these are potential problem areas. And then we can show their customers what they would look like after their treatments are
That
finished
was
in the
that was
future.
my
So it
question.
gets
Are you
them
going to do
thinking long
before and
term.
potential after? Yeah. What have you ever had it to where it made them look worse? Like if
Well,
on ChatGPT or something, you're like, can you do before and after?
yeah. Well, ours isn't 100% automated because I
Yeah.
mean, like we're doing sort of projections, and each
Yeah.
projection is based on
Yeah.
the medical provider, what they think they look for. Because
Right.
some people come in, they're like, I want my lips to be like this, and you're like, trust me, you
Yeah.
don't, and that'll cost you $20,000, just to do that. So our system is basically is tunable. It's sort of like sets
Cool.
scenarios, and then the provider is like, no, I think this is what I think is what I'm going for my patients. So it's very customizable.
Because I could see that where one style of a certain spa could be a certain way, and then another style would be more like I don't know, maybe a Kardashian way where it's more voluptuous, and bigger Brazilian booties style.
Totally,
Like,
totally.
so that's cool. That's cool. They can change it based on their art, their style. Okay, so you got that. You've identified the facial features, and then so the things that you're doing now, you're trying to fill up that bucket. So what avenues are you using to help them fill up that bucket, so that way they got customers, so they can start doing these types of campaigns.
Yeah. So one, we're doing like, like sort of life cycle marketing to existing patients.
Yep.
So we're using not only, doing the basics of getting them booked in appointments, but also then giving them offers that are more compelling for them, and giving them not just offers that are more compelling, but like being able to see the end game. So people are more
Mm-hmm.
interested in like, okay, if I do spend money, this is why. And if well, you're asking me to come back 4 times a year, why? And so once you sort of answer that why, they're willing to say yes more. So that's part of
Mm-hmm.
the entire kind of life
Right.
cycle. And then what we're working on now are features that will allow people to see themselves in the future before they step into a med spa.
Uh-huh.
So, and we're converting a much higher rate on a landing page, and to from like land on a page to conversion to meeting, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're qualifying them along the way too. So it's all right. You land on a page, you can see yourself in the future, what you might look like. You can look at the options, really do an exploration. In the aesthetics industry, it's called a patient consult. So imagine you went into you would have to go to med spa and you'd sit down and you'd say, all right, well, here's what I'm interested in. Here are my goals. Here's my general spend. Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to do a facelift. I've got this stuff in my life in the future. And so we do that remotely. And so for a patient, they can get that experience from our tool without having to go to the med spa first. And by giving them that, it qualifies a lot of leads. We understand spend, what they're interested in spend, their long term, a lot of these things. And so then what you end up getting is you end up more landing page conversions, and then you get basically a funnel that's already pre-segmented, so you know where to put your effort and your spend and your time on what patients.
Yeah, it's really, you think about personalization, customization, which started kind of with like, hey, let's try and get their name in an email. And now we're at the point where, like with retail, like, hey, this is what you'll look like in this shirt. This is what you'll look like if you do this procedure.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty amazing how far things have come to where, you think of just like trying to get someone's name. And now, so when they go to this page, because I with clients I have that do Medispa, and even like weight loss doctors, do they upload their image and then from that essentially they get the feedback?
Yeah, our we can kind of think of like, and this isn't publicly launched. We're using it inside med spas, but it's not
Yeah.
like available publicly.
Yeah.
But they get a text message. The text message contains a link, and that link opens basically a video chat, kind of like what we're on right now. But on the other side of the video chat is an AI agent that can see them and talk to them in real time, can see their image, can see what the facial position. It does lighting checks initially to make sure the lighting's correct, and then it gets the patients to take basically pictures of themselves in different in different angles. There's like 3 angles that a med spas need to do. There's front on, 3/4, and then side profile. And it's all important for showing different parts of the face and all that. And so we're taking those pictures at home and allow the patients to take those and to make sure they're quality. And then those get loaded up into our system, and then also passed into the EHR of our clients. So they have a full record of, hey, date stamp before this patient even showed up. Here's what they looked like before anything started. And so it starts at home, and we also have and it's that same app can be used to capture high quality pictures in the same exact positions inside the med spa. So it can be pretty hard to recreate the exact lighting and other things. And that's really good for before, for case study before and afters. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Wow, that's really come a long way. It reminds me of you're stitching images together, like in the Matrix, the first one where they did the spin around shot. But now they're able to do it with just a hand. Instead of having like 500 cameras, they got 3, and now all of a sudden you got this 360 view of a handful of images, which is cool. That are very high quality. So you get them, they're on the landing page, they come in, they go to their first consult. Now, is there anything that you do to help the professionals at the service provider with being able to provide an experience that has a higher close rate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we basically ask the patients questions about what's important to them. So they go through a whole, and they talk to the AI, and then the AI, and then so they say, "Oh, what are your concerns? So what are the issues you're concerned with?" You know, make suggested things, like, "Hey, these are common things. Or maybe we saw some things in your picture. Do you want to test? Are these things that bother you?" We have them rank their priorities, and then we ask them questions around. These are pretty standard consult questions, patient consult questions, but it's like, all right, well, what are your goals? What's the time frame? What are you doing right now? Have you already tried treatments? What worked and what didn't? How sensitive are you to spend? Like basically, like, what's your general,
Yeah.
are you, yeah, or more like, what's your outcome you want? Do you want a balance of, like, are you looking just to, like, pay the lowest price to get this one thing done, or are you looking to get a pretty good treatment for a good price, or you want the best treatment possible, price is secondary, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then all that data is then passed into our application, which will build out treatment plans automatically for the patient, and then shows them to the provider. So the provider sees, all right, here's some we've already said, based on all these things, what likely they would want, and we offer upsell options too. So the app just kind of automates this entire, process from, candidate, shows up on a landing page, wants to see what they look like in the future, to, hey, they're sitting in a seat. How are they? What should the injector talk to them about? In this industry, a lot of people that are dealing with the patients are medical professionals. They're not trained in sales. They're not particularly interested in sales. They want to have a good outcome. So we're trying to remove all these things from that they have to spend time on, that the business owner is pushing the injectors, the medical staff to do. We kind of remove a lot of that from the responsibility of taking up their time to do, and then offer suggestions. At the end of the day, we're not offering medical advice. So it's really up to the patient. It's up to the provider themselves what they're going to offer. But we eat up for them and show them all the options, and how much they'd make in revenue and all that from it. So we give them all.
That's awesome. I mean, essentially, they're getting a step by step on how to essentially do first touch to mid touch, and then you provide the last touches to keep them generating revenue. And essentially, it's a playbook they can just follow, where they've got the information. Now they just need to essentially show up with a smile.
Yeah. And I started, my mom owns a med spa in Phoenix, Arizona. And, I started, getting into this space because of that, helping her out with initially the helping her with the technical side of things. As a lot of people do for their parents. But kind of then looked at it and said, yeah, these are SaaS businesses. In the day, recurring revenue. How do we make it as easy as possible to understand, segment the audience, create more demand, and then serve it up to the people so they don't have to do a lot of the selling themselves. They can.
Yeah, I know people don't like that. A lot of people. You're like, well, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
So awesome. So what are you doing for the company to continue to onboard new med spas? What are your tactics that you've had a lot of success with, and some that you may not have?
We're still pretty early in our own go to market process. We're still actively, we haven't launched our product completely yet. We're demoing it with people, and we have paying customers, but we're not. We want to make sure the product really kicks before we launch. I've been always a proponent of dogfooding. So using, especially if you're in the, sales enablement, sales automation, market automation spaces, using tools that you have and demonstrating value in the process of reaching your own customers. So that's something that we're focused on, is like just showing it, show don't, sort of like a show don't tell kind of thing. So, hey, this is what you can do, right? And kind of set up on a platter for them. My last company was one of the biggest aggregators of B2B contact data in the world, and basically built effectively like a very high quality CRM, similar to like Apollo, if you're familiar with Apollo.
Yeah, I know.
So we built that, and then built the other things on top of it. So we're really focused on first understanding our targets and doing lots of segmentation. So understanding every attribute of the business, their social profiles, their staff, sort of, are they, obviously are they parts of chains? Are they owned by another organization? Are they business owners, medical owners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And we use that to tailor our approaches. We're doing outbound, but I wouldn't say with outbound we're doing is cold, because we're so informed on the organization. So we're running outbound, but it's really more of our go to market is more like, feels like hand to hand, but has a lot of like data knowledge help for it. So we kind of try to understand the businesses pretty well before we reach out to them. So
yeah. In knowing what you know now, what's something that you wish you knew earlier on?
Interesting. That's a good question. Let's think. I think I think the interesting thing going into the aesthetic space is there's a lot of people, a lot of vendors that promise a lot and don't deliver. And I didn't realize the extent of that there's a lot of
Mhm.
snake oil and a lot of BS
Yeah.
um, out there. And I think that the demonstrating value up front is is uh is a requirement. And I'd say getting social proof is also a requirement. And whereas if you're a B2B SaaS company, social proof is great, but people are out searching for new tools in the B2B SaaS space that will solve their problems. In medical businesses, they're more there's a lot more risk there, and so people are less certain. They're not as big amount of the population is searching for new tools at any given time. So there's definitely like that is definitely an interesting. It was an interesting approach that took a little bit to kind of figure out. So yeah.
Yes. How are you developing your social proof? What would be an example of what you're doing?
Right now with our current customers, that's what we're working on. We're working on just showing massive value. So focused on real, actual demonstrable revenue lifts. This is revenue before, this is revenue after, and then video testimonials that we're are building up. Is huge, and then really keeping things focused, focused on the pain. Right now, the aesthetics industry, like a lot of other industries, is had these amazing years during COVID.
Oh yeah.
People were
Yeah.
at home in front of their cameras and really wanted to make their face look great. Um, and then so business was the highest, that was the high watermark. And as consumer spend goes down, people are looking for value. Um, and I think we're positioned to allow a lot of aesthetics businesses to say like, well, hey, if you don't want to hire more people, if you don't want to, um, if you don't want to hire a lot more staff, you don't have the budget to do that. You can get from your existing business. There's a lot more juice to be squeezed if you know how to find it, and we'll help you find it.
Hmm.
And that's I think people who are focused on improving their business fundamentals is really who we want to talk to. People you know who are already who are good at the medical side of things, but they want that business to run, and drive more profits. We're going to help them drive more profit.
Awesome. And where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's a great place. Conor Lee on LinkedIn, or afters.me is our URL. And LinkedIn's a great place to find me. My Instagram, we're a little behind on the Instagram piece, but we've got our profiles not quite as built out as we should. But LinkedIn's the best place. You can reach out to email me, uh, connect me pretty easily from our website. So you can email Connor@afters.me, or reach out on LinkedIn is great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Really great talking with you.